Now, North Korea is pretty hot under the collar about the South Korea-US joint aerial drills that kicked off on Monday and will last throughout the entire week. But they're not the only ones. China is expressing its discontent with its own aerial exercises over the West Sea and the East China Sea, sending a message to Seoul and Washington. China's Air Force wargaming in the region involves surface-to-air missile forces, fighter jets and early warning aircraft. Though the drills involved multiple jets flying routes and areas they had never flown before, the spokesperson for the Air Force did not specify the day or days during which the drills took place or the exact locations the planes actually travelled. The Chinese Air Force said it will conduct high-sea exercises under combat conditions on a regular basis as it aims to improve readiness and safeguard the country's strategic interests.
The international community are pondering on how to react to North Korea's latest ballistic missile tests. Washington has made it clear that it's China who should do more, like cutting off oil supplies to North Korea. But it seems Beijing is not willing to comply. Kwon Jang-ho reports.
The US issued a strong condemnation of North Korea's latest missile provocation on Wednesday at the emergency UN Security Council meeting in New York. But it was China who they placed firm responsibility on to act.
President Trump called Chinese President Xi this morning and told him that we have come to the point that China must cut off the oil from North Korea. That would be a pivotal step in the world's effort to stop this international pariah.
So far, the reaction from Beijing has not been positive. No official response has been given to Washington's demands, and when the Foreign Ministry spokesperson was asked directly during a press briefing on Thursday, he avoided answering, simply saying that China is implementing current UN sanctions, which capped oil exports to the regime by 30%. China's state-sanctioned newspaper, The Global Times, also issued an op-ed on Thursday entitled "Only the UN Security Council can decide new sanctions on Pyongyang." It says China and Russia will not impose any additional unilateral punishments on North Korea as the US is hoping. It carries on to say that it's now winter and an oil embargo would hurt the people's livelihoods and risk triggering a humanitarian crisis. It concludes China is not a chess piece for others to deploy. But the piece does also call for North Korea to stop provoking the US, and there are other minor movements coming from Beijing. China is threatening to end a near 20-year-old college student exchange program with Pyongyang. Speaking with Hong Kong's South Morning China Post, Li Gang, the official overseeing the program, said he was concerned by the regime's missile tests and that if there were any danger to their students, they would be ready to terminate the exchange. If it were to be cancelled, it would bring an end to one of the longest uninterrupted programs between the two countries.
China's top diplomat is urging both North Korea and the United States to abide by actions within the framework of the United Nations to ease rising tensions on the Korean Peninsula. While calling for the full implementation of UN sanctions on Pyongyang, Wang Yi also took aim at Washington's unilateral measures targeting the North. Yoo Jun-hee reports.
China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi on Monday called on all countries to abide by UN Security Council resolutions regarding the North Korean nuclear issue. Wang, speaking to reporters after a meeting with his Mongolian counterpart, said it was regrettable that all parties involved failed to capitalize on China's appeals to ease tensions. Wang made it clear that China was strongly opposed to North Korea's nuclear and missile programs and had fully implemented all relevant UN resolutions on the matter. He said it was the international duty of all UN members to strictly adhere to decisions made by the Security Council.
China has always resolutely opposed North Korea ignoring UN Security Council resolutions in pushing for the development of nuclear missiles and has always strictly and comprehensively implemented every UN resolution by the letter.
However, he also took aim at Washington's unilateral sanctions targeting the North, saying any measures that lack international legal support could undermine the execution of UN resolutions. Wang said China was opposed to any action that could aggravate tensions on the Korean Peninsula while calling for a return to dialogue. China and Russia have continued to push their dual suspension proposal of mutual de-escalation by both North Korea and the United States. It proposes the US and South Korea stop holding joint military drills in the region in exchange for Pyongyang's freezing of its nuclear program, which was previously rejected by the Trump administration.
It is 53 years since China joined the nuclear club. When it detonated its first atomic bomb, China was poor and recovering from civil war and Japan's military occupation. Chairman Mao said that to prevent that happening again, he needed the ultimate deterrent. It was now the Cold War, and China's then ideological ally, the Soviet Union, was happy to help. There are no official figures regarding China's nuclear arsenal. That's because it's one of the biggest state secrets of all. But a recent US government report estimated that China currently has around 300 nuclear warheads and around 100 intercontinental ballistic missiles to deliver those warheads. As recently as May this year, Chinese leaders pledged they would only use nuclear weapons if China was attacked first. What's less clear, say experts, is how China would respond to a conventional weapons strike.
China will only use nuclear weapons to retaliate against a nuclear strike. But we have to admit there are internal debates. Some people want to see China to change its nuclear policy and treat a conventional strike on its nuclear weapons as a nuclear strike on China.
4 of China's neighbors are nuclear armed: Russia, Pakistan, India, and North Korea. Recent evidence suggests that China may have unintentionally aided the North's nuclear missile program when it sold these trucks, supposedly destined for the timber industry. Analysts say those same trucks, seen here, were later modified to carry and possibly launch the long-range missiles North Korea's been testing.
China in recent years also sold some heavy truck chassis to North Korea, and in those cases North Korea provided end-use certificate to China, pledging that these heavy trucks would only be used for logging.
Unlike North Korea, China doesn't boast about being a nuclear power. But a recent military parade in Beijing was a potent reminder of its growing military strength, a strength underpinned by a nuclear arsenal that experts say is now the world's 4th largest.